The heavy mist clings to the ancient stones of Westminster like a ghost seeking its lost identity, and we stand today at the precipice of a story that began, not with a crown, but with a rebellion against the very idea of absolute shadow. For long centuries, the earth of England drank the sweat of those who labored under the iron will of kings who claimed to speak for the heavens. But a different sound began to rise from the fields and the muddy banks of the Thames. It was a low murmur of discontent that grew into a symphony of defiance. This is the chronicle of how a small island forged a shield of law to protect the many from the whims of the one. It is a tale of blood and parchment, and the slow grind of justice against the gears of tyranny. We are the witnesses to a miracle of human organization that changed the destiny of the world. The echo of the past is a thunderous roar that calls us to remember. The central truth of our journey is that power is a wildfire that must be contained within a hearth of representation. We call this hearth the Parliament. It was not built in a single day, nor was it the work of a single visionary mind, but it was the result of 1,000 small battles and 1,000,000 quiet sacrifices. The thesis of England is that the law is the only true sovereign, and this idea was a radical departure from the world of the past, where the word of a monarch was the only reality. We must understand that the building we see today is merely the skin of a much deeper and more ancient organism. The Parliament is the collective soul of a people who decided that they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. This is the flame we carry into the darkness of the future. Think back to the year 1215, when the fields of Runnymede were thick with the smell of horseflesh and the tension of an empire on the brink. King John was a man of cold ambition and even colder heart, who pushed his people until they had nothing left to give but their rage. The barons did not come to him with humble petitions, but with the weight of their swords and the clarity of their demands. They forced his hand and made him sign the Magna Carta, which was the first crack in the dam of absolute rule. This was the moment the world shifted on its axis, and the king was no longer a god among men, but a man among laws. This document was the birth certificate of liberty and the first step on a long road toward the light. It established that even the highest head must bow to the common good and the shared customs of the realm. The mechanism of this new world was built upon the simple yet profound idea of consent. No king could tax his people without first listening to their grievances and seeking their approval. This created a bridge between the palace and the marketplace, where the needs of the common man finally found a voice. The early councils were rough and chaotic, but they held the seeds of everything we hold dear today. They met in drafty halls and argued over the price of wool and the cost of war. Through these debates, the Parliament discovered its power to check the ambition of the throne. It was a slow evolution of committee and procedure that turned a royal advisory board into a legislative powerhouse. The gold of the merchants became more powerful than the steel of the knights, and the pen became more feared than the lance. But history is a cruel teacher, and the lessons of freedom are often written in the ink of tragedy. The 17th century brought a storm that tore the kingdom apart and pitted brother against brother in a desperate struggle for the soul of the nation. Charles I believed in his divine right to rule without question, but the Parliament had grown too strong to be silenced. The war was a long and bloody nightmare that left the fields of England scarred and the hearts of its people broken. When the king was finally brought to trial, it was a scene that defied the imagination of the age. A monarch was judged by his own subjects and found wanting in the scales of justice. the fall of the axe was a sound that echoed across every border and told the world that the era of the king was ending, a moment that redefined the limits of human authority forever. The consequence of this fire was the birth of a constitutional order that became the envy of the civilized world. The Bill of Rights was the final stone in the wall of protection that ensured the Parliament would never again be second to the crown. This was the era of the Glorious Revolution, where the transition of power happened not with the sword, but with agreement. England emerged as a global power not just because of its navy, but because of its stability. The Parliament provided a platform for the genius of the people to flourish, without the fear of arbitrary seizure. This model of governance was the engine of progress and the blueprint for every democracy that followed in its wake. It proved that a nation is strongest when its people are invested in its success, and when its leaders are bound by the same rules as the poorest beggar. We look back now from the high ground of the 21st century, and we see the immense scale of this achievement. The struggle for Parliament was the struggle for the human spirit, to express its dignity through the medium of law. It is a story of resilience and the unyielding belief that we are all part of something greater than ourselves. The halls of power are still standing, and the debates still continue, because the questions of liberty are never truly settled. We must honor the ghosts of the past by protecting the institutions they built with such pain and such hope. The past is not dead, it is not even past. The history of England is the history of a conversation that has been going on for 1,000 years, and we are the latest participants in that grand dialogue. The archives of time offer us the wisdom to navigate the complexities of our own age with grace and determination. We are the stewards of a sacred fire that has burned through the darkest nights of our history, and we must carry this torch with honor. Let us look upon the Parliament not as a distant relic, but as a living testament to our shared strength and our unyielding resolve. We must listen to the voices that still echo through the ancient archives and the chronicles of the ages to find our own path forward in this uncertain world. We invite you to join us as we continue to explore the depths of our heritage and the power of our collective voice and the stories that define us. Subscribe to our channel to uncover more secrets from the deep well of history. The soul of the nation lives within the laws we uphold,